everyone! So in this presentation, we will talk about the lesson 2, which is the duties of phlebotomist. So in the lesson 1, they have introduced to you probably what is phlebotomy. But in this lesson, we will further discuss kung ano nga ba yung mga tungkulin ng mga phlebotomist. But before going into the main topic, let's have Kyla first introduce to us what is phlebotomist.
What is a phlebotomist? A phlebotomist is a person trained to obtain blood samples primarily by venipuncture and microtechniques. Phlebotomist ang tawag sa taong tagakuha ng dugo. While phlebotomy is ang proseso ng pagkuha ng dugo for the purpose of blood testing. So bakit nga ba ginagawa ito? Ginagawa ito para i-monitor at ma-diagnose ang pasyente, which is trabaho ng mga nurses, doctors. As a medtech, trabaho nating mag-perform ng test. In additional to technical, clerical, and interpersonal skills, the phlebotomist must develop strong organizational skills to handle a heavy workload efficiency and maintain accuracy, often under stressful conditions. A phlebotomist must develop strong organizational skills. So these kinds of skills is necessarily needed. Kapag kasi organized ka, you will perform tests smoothly and less struggle. So, kapag hindi ka organized, maaring magkamali ka or pwedeng mag-cause ka ng panganib sa pasyente. So, kailangan nating iwasan.
Yun na nga, bukod sa mga sinabi ni Kyla na pagkuha ng dugo, as a phleb, sila din yung mga mahahaba ang pasensya, mababait, okay yung communication skills kasi sa laboratory, sila mismo yung nakakausap ng pasyente. Part nila sa pre-analytical phase ng laboratory, dapat tama yung fasting ng pasyente bago nila kunan ng dugo, tama yung site ng pagkukunan nila, tama ng order of draw and inversion ng tubes, timely giving specimens sa main laboratory, at ang pinaka-importante, yung labeling ng specimen sa kanila yan. So, lahat ng yon ay i-elaborate pa natin sa pamamagitan ng ibang members na mag-e-explain sa mga duties ng phlebotomist.
The principal purpose of phlebotomy is to obtain blood samples at the request of a physician for analysis in the laboratory. Performing these duties correctly ensures that patients receive prompt and complete medical care. Failure to perform these duties correctly can lead to significant adverse consequences for the patient, including improper care and even death. There are major traditional duties and responsibilities of the phlebotomist. First, correct identification and preparation of the patient before sample collection. Correctly and positively identify the patient by asking the patient to state his or her name. This information must match the requisition. Prepare patients for collection procedures associated with laboratory samples. Second, collection of the appropriate amount of blood by venipuncture or dermal puncture for the specified test. Reassure the patient that the minimum amount of blood required for testing will be drawn.
The third duty of a phlebotomist is the selection of appropriate sample containers for the specified test. So it is really important for a phlebotomist to consider or to have an appropriate sample containers for the specified test for sample preservation. So kapag si phlebotomist gumamit ng wrong container or incorrect container, it will lead to errors doon sa results. And also, kapag gumamit sila ng wrong container, maaari din itong mag-lead ng specimen rejection. Why? Because every containers have its own additive, has its own volume, and has its own function. So, kapag nag-collect ng blood samples si phlebotomist, meron itong appropriate na containers na paglalagyan doon. Next, the fourth duty of a phlebotomist is the correct labeling of samples with the required information. So it is really a must for a phlebotomist to have a correct labeling of samples and also with the required information, because it is a way to protect or to prevent patient from acquiring errors doon sa results nila. So for example, si phlebotomist inutusan na kumuha ng specified test sa 4 na patients, which is si patient A, si patient B, si patient C, at si patient D. So, kapag yung information ni patient A na label ngayon kay patient B or yung information ni patient C ni-label ngayon kay patient D, so doon na magkakaroon ng errors doon sa maaaring doon sa results nung na-collect na samples. So, this is because doon sa incorrect labeling na nangyari. So, which is maaari din itong magdulot ng incorrect diagnosis doon sa patient at dahil doon sa incorrect labeling. So, kailangan talaga na i-consider natin o kailangan talaga na magkaroon si phlebotomist ng correct labeling para ma-avoid itong problem na ito.
First, let's go to the appropriate transportation of samples back to the laboratory in timely manner. So, ang ibig lang sabihin nito, once a specimen had been collected, dapat agad-agad na natransport at nadadala na ito sa laboratory for further analysis or diagnosis. Kasi para maiwasan ang too much exposure of a person or medical personnel precisely to the blood or any kind of body fluid to avoid contamination or damages. Next that I will be discussing is the effective interaction with the patient and other hospital personnel. So, we all know that any kind of field, especially in healthcare setting, importante ang interaction because if the patient and physician have an interaction with each other, magbibuild ang trust and good relationship from there. Hindi lang naman para sa pasyente and the physician. Of course, physician has the responsibility to interact with the other hospital personnel or co-workers para ma-build at magkaroon ng unity, camaraderie inside the healthcare setting. And of course, kapag may clarification or duties or opportunities ganyan na, ay ba't ganito yung lumabas na resulta, you can ask your colleagues para naman ma-verify kung tama ba yung resulta o ganyan. Another example is because of interaction, nalaman mo na yung pasyente na kukunan mo ng sample, which is blood, is may phobia pala sa needle. O by that help of interaction, syempre, makakapag-isip ka ng other way or alternative way para hindi matrigger yung phobia ng pasyente habang kinukuhanan mo siya ng samples. That's all. Thank you.
Another duties and responsibilities of phlebotomists is processing of samples for delivery to the appropriate laboratory department. It says here that proper specimen collection and handling is an integral part of obtaining a valid and timely laboratory test result. So, as a phlebotomist, you are responsible for bringing all blood and specimen samples to the laboratory either in the hospital you are working in or locally in the area. The critical step in the lab testing process after obtaining the sample is the preparation of the blood samples. Here, the phlebotomist will first confirm the client and specimen details and ascertain adequacy and appropriateness of specimens, and also to ensure that the specimens are labeled for patient safety. If the specimen is not accurately identified, it can lead to delayed or wrong diagnosis, missed or incorrect treatment, and more. Also, specimens should be stored effectively to avoid erroneous results that can affect patient care and outcomes. Preparing specimens to be sent to our reference laboratory is essential, and phlebotomists are responsible for obtaining specimens and transporting them to the laboratory. And also, their vital role is to ensure that laboratory tests are valid. And also, phlebotomist duties and responsibilities is performance of computer operations and record keeping pertaining to phlebotomy. Phlebotomists help keep patients and laboratory records up to date. They must mark the sample properly with the patient's full name, date of birth and ID number and other information such as the time and date of collection. They usually also need to enter information about blood samples and test into a digital data entry system. These records are necessary for every patient. Kasi nga, phlebotomist can't be expected na matatandaan niya lahat ng pasyente na kinuhanan niya ng dugo years ago. So, kinakailangan talaga na magkaroon ng record para sa lahat ng pasyente. And one more thing, record keeping is extremely important if a medical malpractice case goes to court. And this record will serve as an evidence and proof sakaling ngang mangyari yun.
I will be discussing the last two major traditional duties and responsibilities of the phlebotomist. First, observation of all safety regulations, quality control checks, and preventive maintenance procedures. As a phlebotomist, we must be familiar with a variety of roles and obligations, such as adhering to occupational safety laws because our occupation exposes us to a high risk of injuries caused by toxins, sharps, and other infectious materials. As phlebotomists, we must broaden our sights and ensure our own well-being when taking care of our patients. Indeed, we have roles to do in our workplace with other individuals or our society, but we must also keep in mind our own safety. Observation of all safety regulations can help find unsafe activities and unsafe conditions at the workplace. That's why safety observations is a fruitful activity. In terms of quality control checks, as a skilled person, particularly in the field of medicine, our mission is to save lives and provide a solution to specific issue in accordance with our profession. So we must ensure that we are doing our best and taking the necessary steps to ensure that we can provide satisfactory and outstanding results in the workplace. Assuring the quality of jobs in the workplace results in fewer problems and challenges in healthcare profession. In addition, quality control checks is about detecting defects and deviations, so we need to study well in testing the processes involved in creating a product or testing the product itself to ensure that the correct parameters are met. Accurate and timely report are one of the major responsibilities of the laboratory. In terms of preventive maintenance procedures, any worker in the specific occupation must know the mitigation technique, and we do not always have companions or staff who are delegated to do the preventive steps. As a worker, we must use our efforts to do a job to avoid or overcome unforeseen problems or struggles in the workplace, because this is a part of our career, so we must take it as a part of the job. The other one is attendance at continuing education programs. Being a specialist doesn't imply that you know everything about your career, but there are workshops or events tailored for us to learn, share, and change. These are the practices relevant to our profession, in which we may regularly participate in order to be transformed into well-rounded practitioners. The purpose why we needed to actively participate in those kinds of programs is to develop and enhance our skills in the said profession. Participation will help us a lot in the workplace because we can learn and gain more knowledge in the said profession we have chosen.
So we have additional duties of phlebotomists. So first is the training other healthcare personnel to perform phlebotomy. So phlebotomists or other healthcare personnel must do or have trained in procedure specific or dependent sa types of specimen they collect. And to perform phlebotomy services is to strive and to achieve best practices to collect blood and to caution errors or reduce harm to every patient, and para ma-analyze adequately, efficiently, and carefully the collected blood, and especially to evaluate the effectiveness of medication of our patient. And also, healthcare personnel know the standard safe practices in collecting blood or performing phlebotomy services. Lastly, personal phlebotomists must have training to always ensure that they perform sufficient standards of phlebotomy to prevent complications. Second is monitoring the quality of samples collected on the units. So monitor is to evaluate and to do observation to the collected samples on unit, to have or to know accurate and convinced testing that phlebotomists monitor the progress, to provide an overview what has been done in collection. Lastly, to monitor the safety of the blood, to always check the errors and accident, and to do diagnosis adequately.
The third additional duties of phlebotomists is the evaluation of protocols associated with sample collection. In conducting sample collection on a certain patient, there are protocols needed to be followed step by step in order to have an accurate result. First is, it is needed to conduct an investigation on a patient thoroughly before proceeding to sample collection to prevent incorrectness of the result. Second is correct procedure. By following step-by-step protocols will make the result more systematic. And lastly, conduct research or read related articles that are connected to the duties of phlebotomist, and review it every day for you to master the protocols of phlebotomist, so that next time na mag-conduct ka ng sample collection, you're confident that the result will be accurate. Fourth is performing and monitoring of POCT or point of care testing. Requires more knowledge on how to operate POCT technologies. POCT technologies are devices used by patients because devices today are more portable. It requires less blood and computerized information management. This kind of devices also is used often during emergencies. Example is if there's an accident on the road, you call for help. The first one to respond is the ambulance. An ambulance has a POCT device that provide faster result and that you can treat the patient in your way to the near hospital. So in order to perform or use POCT devices more accurately, you should be knowledgeable enough and attend training related to it.
Performing patient's vital signs. Vital signs include the measurement of temperature, respiratory, pulse, blood pressure, height, and weight. These numbers provide critical information. These measurements are taken to help assess the general physical health of a person, give clues to possible diseases, and show the progress towards recovery. An electrocardiogram records the electrical activity of your heart at rest. It provides information about your heart rate and rhythm, and shows if there is enlargement of your heart due to the high blood pressure, or evidence of a previous heart attack. With each heartbeat, an electrical impulse or wave travels through your heart. This wave causes the muscle to squeeze and pump blood from the heart.
Phlebotomists are professionals who draw blood from patients. They take these blood samples to the laboratory and further check for health issues like diseases, bacteria, cholesterol, and more. Phlebotomists collects a variety of other specimen samples as well, and label the blood vials that they already have filled. They are also responsible for bringing all blood and specimen sample to the laboratory. So another duty of a phlebotomist is the collection of arterial blood sample. It is used in the identification of metabolic, respiratory, and mixed acid-base disorders, where carbon dioxide levels require understanding or monitoring. While generally safe, the procedure can be upsetting and painful for the patient. There are also several potential contradictions that can affect the site of the collections, such as an abnormal modified Allen test or local infection. there is also an increased risk of bleeding complications in patients with coagulopathy. Next is the collection of sample from central venous access devices. In some instances, blood culture specimens from a central venous access device may be ordered. A CVAD specimen should be used only when central line associated bloodstream infection is suspected. When a CLABSI is suspected, one set of specimens should be obtained via venipuncture and the other set should be obtained through the distal lumen of the CVAD suspected of being infected. When venipuncture is not possible, two blood specimens may be collected through different lumens of same CVAD if they are available. A higher rate of contamination has been found in blood samples obtained from central lines when compared with samples that are obtained from peripheral sites. The specimen bottle should be appropriately marked to reflect the sites from which the specimens were obtained.
And so that's it for our presentation. I hope we explained it right and clearly, and also through this task given to us, we have acquired knowledge as well as our potentials to lead and be like them someday. Thank you for watching.